This week on Quality Digest Live, 11 leadership behaviors that really count.
Plus, is poor quality the fault of ISO 9001? We'll find out when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for October 9th, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richman. All right, well, we're going to start this week with the news that the Deming Institute is hosting their inaugural Deming in Education Conference in Seattle from November 6th to November 8th. The event is designed for educators, administrators, business leaders, and others, really anyone with a stake in improving the quality of learning, which is really, I think, everyone, right? Who doesn't have a stake in improving the quality of learning? Deming's statistical and systematic approach to problem solving and improvement has great applicability actually to the field of education when you think about it, especially when you look at Deming's 14 points. For example, consider point 3, Deming's point number 3, which is cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. And you know, if you ask me, that really speaks to the need to get away from the rampant practice of teaching to the test, right? I mean, that's what I hear that loud and clear. I don't know what else would, right? And how about points 10, 11, and 12, all of which speak out against the reliance on targets, goals, and rating systems. And to me, that sounds a lot like the arguments against the Common Core curriculum, which has a tendency to straitjacket students and teachers alike. I mean, you see where this is going, right? Deming has these points and has his philosophy, his system of profound knowledge that was really intended to really look at an industrial workplace, right? And these things that you can do to improve an industrial workplace, but the applicability to education is really clear, right? Things that we're struggling with now, like the Common Core and whether or not that should exist or not is front and center for educators right now. And Deming really had answers to those things and had processes in place to address them and to help improve them.
Well, it also, in a sense, addresses the customer. And I know a lot of teachers a lot of teachers don't like the idea of student and parents as customers. But for the sake of this, if you look at students and parents as customers and the educational system as the producer or the provider, a lot of what Deming says makes sense there. Consideration for the teacher, let's say, rather than the worker, and a consideration for the end user of the product.
That's right. That's right. It is very applicable. That's the bottom line there. And the conference, like all Deming Institute events, has an interesting and a very highly qualified mix of speakers, and of course some great networking opportunities as well. So if you want more information on the inaugural Deming in Education Conference, check out the story link just below this video player screen right down there. And of course, as always, all those stories we're going to be covering on today's show, you can find them all right down there.
That's right, including this next one.
That's right.
According to a new Gallup survey, Americans' views of the pharmaceutical industry, an unpopular group that narrowly climbed into the public's favor last year, slipped back into negative territory in 2015. In Gallup's annual measure of 25 major U.S. business sectors, the percentage of Americans with a positive view of the pharmaceutical industry dropped from 40% in 2014 to 35% this year, while the percentage with a negative view rose from 36% to 43%. This leaves the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, with a negative net positive rating of -8 in 2015. If you're not familiar with what net positive is, it is simply the difference between the percentage of positive views on a subject versus the percentage of negative views. So a minus percentage means that more people have a negative opinion on something than a positive opinion. Think of it as the spread, the point spread. Okay,
perfect.
So for many years, the U.S. public has had issues with the pharmaceutical industry. According to Gallup, as far back as 1991, 73% of Americans said they considered the high cost of prescription drugs an important reason for rising healthcare costs. Since 2001, when Gallup began testing views of major businesses and industry sectors, the public has had an overall positive view of the pharmaceutical industry only 3 times: in 2001, 2003, and 2014. I think we've got a little slide there that kind of shows the views of the pharmaceutical industry over that time. And you can see 2001 it was up, and 2003 it was up, but usually -10, -17, -18, so on and so forth, -8 this year. So largely negative, in fact, in the lower third most of the time. So since 2003, when Gallup expanded the list to 25 industries, the pharmaceutical industry has consistently ranked in the bottom third. Now, if you don't follow pharmaceutical issues or have to buy prescription drugs, you might wonder, what is the stink over pharmaceutical companies? You know, why such a negative? Here's a couple of recent examples that I think explain it. First, for instance, there is actually a nearly perfect cure, I'm not sure if many of you know this, a nearly perfect cure for the most common type of hepatitis C. 3 million people have hepatitis C. It's called Sovaldi, and it doesn't just manage the symptoms, it cures nearly 90% of the people that go on the 12-week regimen. 90% cure rate. Sovaldi is considered really a miracle drug. 1 pill per day for 84 days, and you're cured at $1,000 per pill. So 84 grand for the treatment. There are, as I said, nearly 3 million hepatitis C patients in the United States, so you can do the math. And I'm sure Gilead, the makers of the drug Sovaldi, have done the math. Another example, you've probably heard of this. Baltimore was one of the first cities to let their emergency responders start using a nasally injected dose of Naxalone to combat heroin overdoses. And since then, other jurisdictions have as well. Naloxone works remarkably well, and because it's nasally administered, it's easy to teach how to use it. It's just a spray, essentially, that goes up in the nostril. So it can be used by first responders at the scene, as opposed to what was done in the past. You find a heroin overdose, you'd have to bring that person to the hospital and then give them an injection of naloxone, which might be too late by that point. It has been okayed for use by emergency responders in more than 40 states. So, as demand has increased, the maker, Amphastar, has doubled its price from $20 per dose to $40 per dose. Doubled the price. So when people hear examples like these, and there are plenty of others, you probably know some, particularly when, as in these two cases, they're the only producer of the drug, it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Now, I don't think most people have a problem with companies making a fair profit, whether it's a drug company or an oil company, whatever. But if the profit seems excessive and it rides on the back of consumers, then you're going to get negative public opinion. Now, to be fair, if you talk to these companies, these pharmaceutical companies, they will tell you that, look, our R&D and our production costs are really high. I mean, it can take years and years, decades even, to get a drug into the public view. But hold on one second here. I'm having problems with my clicker. Well, we're going to have problems here. Okay, so we'll just wang it here. So they'll tell you that there's been problems with high production costs, issues with high production costs, and just the length of time that it takes to get a product into market. And so there's a lot of costs associated with that, and I think most people would agree. But the issue is they haven't done a very good job of communicating that. And because they haven't done a good job of communicating that, there is a negative public perception. And so unless they do something with that, there's going to be a continuing slide in what people think of pharmaceutical companies. I mean, just kind of no way around it.
No, you hit the nail on the head. I think that when you deal with R&D problems and you deal with issues of people, these companies spending a lot of money in research and development and in production, I mean, they need to recoup it, and their shareholders want them to recoup it too, right? I mean, it's not just them saying, well, we want to make as much money as we possibly can. Their shareholders want to make sure that they recoup that money. So, they charge a lot of money for these drugs that make it, but you think about the drugs that don't make it, well,
sure,
there's a lot of those.
But I think what a lot of people have said is that and people who are familiar with the industry know how much money it takes to produce a drug. That they're saying even considering recouping those costs, that some of these drug prices really amount to gouging. So
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yep.
No doubt, it's an issue. All right, well, we're going to move on now to our first feature article, and this one is by Harry Hertz, and it ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, and you can see it, I think, up on the screen right there. And in this piece, Hertz, leadership behaviors that count and benefit all organizations. Again, that ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And in this piece, Hertz, as the retired director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program, he talks a little bit about exactly what that article says. I mean, what the behaviors are that that people need to understand, if they're gonna lead properly. Now, again, as I mentioned, he's the retired director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program, but he's still very active within the group. And here he talks again about the importance of leadership in high-performing organizations, and within that, there's actually 11 key attributes that he points out that are the most important things, and these tie back with the Baldrige criteria, the Baldrige system that helps organizations succeed. And these 11 key attributes, and I'm not going to go through them all here because again, there's 11 of them, and I don't want to kind of go through them all in this short article, but I certainly encourage you to go out and take a look at them on the article. Again, the article is right below the player page right down there, and you can check them out and you can see all 11 of the attributes. But I want to kind of tie those attributes back to some surveys he mentions, because there's surveys that he brings up here from Baldrige Fellows, as well as a number of broader surveys from a lot of organizations such as IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and many others. And these surveys represent tens of thousands of senior executives. And basically what's going on here is that all these senior executives are contributing their thoughts, their best practices, and they're saying what their fears are and what their optimisms are with regard to doing exactly what they do, which is leadership. These show alignment, these surveys I just mentioned, they show alignment with the results of the 11 leadership behaviors in areas that executives thought they did well, and then also in things that they believe that they needed to do better. So in other words, what's going on here is Harry is taking the 11 leadership behaviors, and then he's looking at these numerous surveys, and there's several of them, that where leaders are, including Baldrige Fellows, are saying what they did well, what they think they need to improve on. And again, matching that back to the 11 leadership behaviors that are part of the Baldrige criteria. So the strengths he's talking about are things like visionary leadership, right, which is behavior number 1. And also valuing people, which is behavior number 4. Those are the strengths that some of these leaders stated were important, or they felt like they did really well at. And again, remember, these are executives judging themselves, and for most of these folks, they are going to tend to view themselves probably as visionaries, right? And they're going to tend to value and respect their teams. That's just what people who are leaders in these types of positions generally tend to do. So again, visionary leadership, which is behavior 1, and valuing people, behavior 4, are 2 of the things that people thought that they did well at. At the other end of the spectrum, they felt the need to improve things, like for instance, behavior number 3, which is customer-focused excellence. Customers today, of course, have ever higher expectations. They want increased customization. We know that. And of course, there's more and more data on those customers, their interactions, their experiences, and that allows leaders to, they assume that should allow leaders to better understand customers both individually and as a group. Now, whether or not they really do is another matter, and that's really what the point is here, is that I think leaders feel as though customer-focused excellence is something that they really should be doing a good job on, but they feel like they don't have a handle on it. I think that there's been so much change with regard to customers over the course of time that I think leaders feel like, well, we're a little bit at sea, we're a little adrift with regard to how we deal with our customers. And things like data is a good thing. I mean, you want to know what your customers are doing with the interactions, how they deal with you, but by the same token, you can't really get your arms around all that data. So I think that leaders are feeling like they're not doing a good job of that. Well, like everyone else, leaders really want to improve and they want to add value. And the Baldrige data proves that out, that these leaders that were surveyed and trying to map back to the different leadership behaviors that Harry is talking about here, these leaders feel like they need to improve. They feel like they want to improve. They feel like they need to do a better job of basically managing their companies. And they're conscious of that, and they're conscious of it specifically with regard to customers and what the customers want to do and need to do. So it's interesting to see that, and it's interesting to know that Baldrige is aware of this and that Baldrige wants to do a better job in this realm. I think it's really interesting. And I think that Harry Hertz, again, he's retired, but he's still very active in the organization. He's got his finger on the pulse of this. And I think that it's definitely good that the Baldrige has that perspective, that they have their hand in these surveys, and they understand what senior executives want, and they also understand how to improve organizations. That's really important stuff, I think.
Yeah, good stuff from Harry. He's been involved with the Baldrige for a really long time, so he knows the ins and outs of the Baldrige, and he really has a really good idea for also how the Baldrige ties into a lot of different ideas and a lot of different industries as well.
It does, yeah.
It's good stuff.
But Harry Hertz is a terrific leader, and definitely check out the story again right below the player page, right down there.
Okay. Is poor quality ISO 9001's fault? And that was both the title of an article this week by Arun Hariharan, and also a question that he posed to a LinkedIn group. And he got it was kind of spurred. It was spurred on, Arun says, by a comment made to him by his CEO once, who said, "Even the municipal office of the city is ISO 9001 certified, and we all know how bad that is. So I don't believe ISO can do my business any good." So this criticism, this idea, really has been around since the beginning of ISO. I mean, we've covered ISO since the very first ISO 9001, ISO 9002, 9003. At the time it was called the ISO 9000 series. What was it, 1984. And from the very beginning, people have made the argument, well, you could be ISO 9001 certified and still create a concrete life jacket, right?
Right.
So, but I think, and that was kind of some of the comments, not the majority, but some of the comments that Arun got was that, well, yeah, it's true. I mean, ISO 9001, doesn't give you quality, or it can be bad for quality. Right. And I think they're kind of missing the point. And I think Arun pointed this out, and I think the majority of responders to his article pointed this out too, is ISO 9001, like any program, whether it's Six Sigma or Lean or TQM or quality circles, none of them by themselves do anything.
Right.
It's how they're implemented. It's buy-in from management. It's management oversight. It's management involvement. It's even just culture. What kind of culture have you bred within your organization that wants to continuously improve? If you don't have that culture, if you don't have management support, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
And that's kind of largely what a lot of the folks who gave input back to Arun said. So it's interesting. And I want to read from this. In ISO 9001 2015, this is the new version of ISO 9001, Section 5 on leadership starts off by saying, top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the quality management system by taking accountability for the effectiveness of the quality management system. So ISO 9001 itself has recognized, the developers have recognized that leadership is important. It's always been important, but now they're starting to really kind of embed this idea more forcefully into the standard. So notice what it says, accountability for effectiveness. Now before, to contrast this, in 2008, the wording was was more along the lines, top management shall provide evidence of its commitment to communicating, establishing the quality product policy, ensuring that quality objectives are not met, but established, and conducting management reviews, ensuring the availability of resources. There's nothing there that says accountability for the effectiveness. Management leadership was more responsible to making sure that the tools were in place. So I think the standard itself is kind of recognizing that, look, this isn't going to work unless we hold management accountable for what's actually happening with the quality management system. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? So most of the comments, like I said, agreed with this, but another topic that did come up was, okay, so ISO 9001 itself isn't to blame. It's the auditors that are to blame. Right. And there's a certain logic to this argument. The argument about auditors and registrars is that there is unfortunately let's say a financial incentive to not find too many nonconformances. This is an argument that some would make, saying that, look, as a company, we pay a registrar and his auditor to come in and audit us. If we think they're finding too many nonconformances or we don't like them, well, we're just going to fire that registrar and hire a different one that might be a little bit more friendly, right? It's an interesting argument. There may be some truth to it.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
no, go ahead,
okay.
yeah.
There may be some truth to it, and Arun even says that. Look, he had a situation happen to him at one company, where an auditor came in and did not report nonconformances that the company knew they were there because their own internal auditors had found them. And Arun and their team called the auditor on the carpet and said, "Look, you missed these things. Why did you not do these things?" And he kind of backtracked, and they explained to him and said, "Look, we want you to find problems. We want you to help us improve. If you're seeing something that isn't being done right, something that we could be doing better, or is just completely wrong, you should be telling us so that we can improve." So part of Arun's response to this argument that, well, the registrars and the auditors are kind of in bed with the clients because, there's a financial relationship going on. He said, okay, that's still on the company. If you want your company to improve, then you should be working with the auditors and the registrar and basically explicitly telling them no holds barred.
Right.
You should be telling them it's okay for you to find stuff. We want you to tell us.
Yeah.
And if you do that, because it's only going to help them improve.
Well, right. And again, it goes back to the idea of why are you registering to ISO 9001, right? I mean, if you're doing it just to get a certificate on the wall, then you want an auditor to go easy on you, right? You just want to get the thing done, and you want to get the registration up on the wall. But if you want to improve, if you want to really make your organization the best organization it can be, well, yeah, you want some pushback from that auditor. You want that person to come in, and you want that level of rigor. You want that person to look at everything you're doing, because that person from the outside looking in, it's kind of like editing. I always use the example of editing, because when you're a writer and you write something, you know in your mind what you meant. You know what those words mean because you see them. But a third party looking at it may say, that's not what that means to me. Right. And you want that from an editor, and you want that from an auditor. You want the auditor to come in and say, well, you may think it means that, but really what you're doing is this, and it's a nonconformance. So, yeah, you want that pushback, because ultimately you're going to get a lot better from doing it that way. And I think that's what Arun is kind of saying there, is that's the value in the auditing process. And it goes to his second article, which is
what had to do with the auditors.
Certification body, a police force, or is it I forget how he phrased it, if it's a police force or if it's a partner.
Or a partner, Right. And they should be a partner.
And they should be a partner, but they should also be a partner that kind of plays the role of the cop a little bit sometimes too, to say, hey, you're doing something wrong and you've got to straighten this out. So there's a role there for both elements.
So the upshot is, the answer to the question, is poor quality ISO 9001's fault? The answer is, well, no. I mean,
no.
It's not. I mean, it's implemented by people.
Right.
And it's your responsibility to make sure that you follow the framework, that you're trying to get value out of it, and that also you work with your registrar and their auditors to make sure that you do get value out of it. If you don't, you may have poor quality, but that's not the fault of the standard.
No, it's your fault. I mean, if you are going into ISO 9001 for the wrong reasons, you don't get the quality you want out of it, well, it's your fault. And if you assume that the auditor, the registrar, or ISO themselves, ANSI, whomever it is going to help cover your butt on that, you're wrong. You've got to own up to yourself and take your own responsibility. So I think you're right, Dirk. I think that it's not the fault of ISO 9001 if companies registered to ISO 9001 don't have good quality.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. All right, good stuff there, Dirk. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next article now, and this was written by Bob Emiliani, and it appeared, I believe, in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. It's called "Observe and Ask Why." Yes, that was actually in Tuesday's issue of QD right there. Understanding waste, unevenness, and unreasonableness. And now, Bob Emiliani is a critical thinker par excellence. That's really what he does, and it comes really from having a close reading of the ethos of the Toyota production system from his many years both in the field and as an educator. We talked about education early in the show with regard to the Baldrige Education Conference. Emiliani is an educator. We're going to get to the importance of education and teaching a little later in the story. But in this piece, he really talks about Taiichi Ohno, of course, who's the primary architect of the Toyota production system. as is practiced at Toyota for many, many decades. And really, Ono was someone who looked at it from a systems perspective, and he was a critical thinker. And he was able to understand that a comprehensive process system is made up of processes, right? A large-scale organization is made up of a series of processes. And it's only through the understanding of improving those processes that you can improve the entire organization. And from that idea came this thought that he had of the Ono Circle. And the Ono Circle was a way for him to break down the components of the larger organization into its parts, into its processes, and allow fledgling managers to stand and to observe a process at work. And the way this worked was literally he would draw a circle. He would draw a circle in the at the Gemba, right where it was, right on the assembly line, right on the floor, in the case of Toyota, and he would make a fledgling manager. These are mostly young guys. It was all guys in those days. Yeah. He would make these young guys stand there. And you'd think, well, you could stand there for half an hour or whatever. As an American, we'd say, we do that for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. No, all day.
Yeah.
And sometimes for days in a row. He would make these people stand in this little circle, like that big, and you'd stand there. And the idea was that you would watch. You would watch with a focused intensity to see what was going on. And the idea was that you would begin to notice. Again, you'd begin to notice what was going on. You begin to notice what people are doing, how they're doing their work. Then you begin to notice something that they're doing wrong, and whatever it was that you could maybe improve. And that was the idea, was that you were going to notice the muda, right? I mean, you wanted to notice the waste that was going on, but it wasn't just muda that he was concerned with. I want to just take a look at this here. He also said that he was looking at mura, which means unevenness, and he also wanted to look at muri, which is unreasonableness. Those are the three things that they were trying to have people in the Ono Circle see within the process that was going on, was those three things. So one of Ono's disciples in those days related, and Emiliani, his piece, quotes extensively from this guy. And I want to throw it up on the screen here because this was a really good quote about what it's like to actually be in an Ono Circle. So let's check this one out. This is from Teruyuki Minora, who's the former president and CEO of Toyota Motor Manufacturing North America. And he was a direct disciple, as I say, of Ono. And Minora relates his experiences in the Ono Circle thusly. During the first hour, I began to see the process. After 2 hours, I began to see the problems. After the third and fourth hours, I started to ask why. Finally, I found the root causes and started thinking about countermeasures. And it's interesting, because when Minora brought the countermeasures and the things he noticed to Ono, you know what Ono said? Yeah. He said, not yes, not good, not bad. He said, is that so? And that's all he said. He didn't say that's great, that's bad, thanks. You missed this, did you think about that? He said, is that so? And that was it. So, take us back to education and the importance of a learning organization, which Toyota embodies and embodied very much. That was what Ono was. He was a teacher. He was a person who would let these young fledgling engineers find it out for themselves, because there was no other way. The only kind of learning that really sticks is the learning that you learn yourself.
You learn yourself, exactly.
So he allowed these people to see it, to see the waste, to see the unevenness, to see the unreasonableness going on the line, and figure out countermeasures and implement them themselves. He didn't say don't do it. He didn't say, yeah, it's great, go for it. He just said, oh, is that so? Okay, well.
It is amazing, and we've talked about this before. I've done a version of the Ono Circle and in a completely different context. But if you do just do that, whether you do it at home or do it at your office or wherever, it's amazing if you just sit or stand in one spot for long enough, you start to see things that you just would not see otherwise.
That's right.
And it is actually amazing. We get, particularly in today's world, we were talking about email last week, right? In today's world where everything is just so instant, and you got instant messages, and you got emails that you're answering right away, and we do everything so fast that we don't take a lot of time to sit down and just kind of absorb the environment and to really understand. We depend on everything. Pretty much we depend on everything we read or everything we view on our screen, and we're not really I don't think, absorbing our environment and what's really going on. And that's really what the Ono Circle does. It kind of strips you away from all those other inputs and just like says, okay,
and you just
watch.
You just deal with the reality you're having. It's kind of like if you have like a teleprompter and you don't have your teleprompter anymore. You have to,
oh my God,
you have
what
to
do we
deal
do?
with the reality that's going on in real time. It's amazing what you can find out when you do that. So it's great. It's a great story. Bob Miliani is definitely one of my favorite columnists here at QD. A critical thinker par excellence, as I mentioned. Great article there, so check that one out and learn a little bit more about Taiichi Ohno. Really, really interesting.
And do your own
guy.
Ono Circle.
That's right.
I think you'll find it's fun.
That's right.
Okay, now it's time for this week's Tweet of the Week. This week's tweet comes from James Silva, who tweets, "Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things." Deep thoughts.
Deep thoughts from James
Thanks.
Saliba. Thank you,
Thanks,
James.
James Saliba. Thanks a lot.
And of course, check us out on Twitter at Quality Digest for all those great tweets. We bring you tweets every day, many of them just like that. So
just like that.
Check
Deep
it
thoughts.
out.
Okay.
That's right. All right, well, that's our show for today. Thank you all for joining us. Another great week of Quality Digest Daily coming up for you on Monday. We have a full week for you. We'll be back here next Friday for QDL. So everybody have a great weekend. And before I let you go, I want to wish a personal congratulations and good wishes to my good friends, the New York Mets, who are debuting in the playoffs tonight for the first time in 9 years. It's been a long drought for the Mets. They're in LA tonight, so go Mets. Let's go Mets.
Go Mets.
Win that game. All right.
All right. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you.
Have a good weekend. Bye.